Hi everyone, and welcome to a 5-minute guide to Geographic Information Systems, GIS, hosted by Jogger Limited. My name's Alistair Graham, and I'm going to take you through the key things you need to know to be able to talk GIS. So the first thing to know is that the applications of GIS are very wide and varied. I'd go so far as to suggest that it probably doesn't matter what sector or market you're in. If you have a spatial component to the problem that you're trying to solve, then GIS can help you in some way. Analytical methods can also be daisy-chained together to create complex spatial models. And if you have bespoke code that you need to use in order to do your processing, then there's a variety of different plugins and methods to get that code to work alongside the GIS. For different applications and examples of them, I suggest having a look at this Wikipedia page. There are so many different applications, depending on the needs of the user, that it really wouldn't be worth listing them all or trying to list them all in this presentation. So what else do we need to know? We need to know about the different types of data that GIS use. The first is point, there's also line, polygon, and raster data. So raster data is effectively just either images such as satellite images or grid data such as model output. There are 4 core functions to a GIS. Those are to manage your data, and depends on different data types and formats you have, and to create sort of searchable metadata records for those data. The second is to view your data. So most commonly this is to create maps for publication, and these can either be hard copy maps or web maps, that type of thing. And we can also link spatial and non-spatial data together and view them in that sort of context. So for instance, I'm thinking you might have gone out on site for some reason and taken photographs. Now those photographs have a location, but the photographs themselves aren't inherently spatial, but you can link the photograph to the point at which you took the photo within the GIS. Thirdly, you can analyze the data, and this is probably where most of the power users of GIS spend their time, finding relationships and correlations between different data sets, looking at the spatial features of those data sets, and finding new ways to merge data and process them. And then finally, you can also share the information that you have, particularly since web mapping has become so prolific. Just to give you a quick overview of some of the names of software packages that you might come across. There are different ones, such as the open source QGIS, and then there's proprietary ones such as Esri's ArcGIS. GRASS is another open source one, and MapInfo and Idrisi and GeoMedia, SIS are all proprietary. Saga is an open source package that handles GIS data, although it's very good at dealing with raster data sets in particular. And there's a more complete list that is available at the link that I've put there. So there's been a bit of a change in recent years in terms of how GIS systems have been set up. Traditionally, there's been a software package that a user has installed onto their desktop, and then they've managed to get some data from somewhere. It might be a USB disk or a DVD archive, and they're in charge of the data and the analysis, and the only person that can see any of that is the person who's sat at that desktop, or someone who gets called over to look over their shoulder. In recent years, with all of the infrastructure that's going on behind the internet and the move towards sort of cloud services, there's been more of an implementation of what people call the geospatial stack. So you have your storage, and and your interface on a server somewhere, and that serves information out to different people. And depending on what type of user you are, whether you're a manager or a power user or someone who's out in the field, you can have access to different data, and you can process it in different ways. And then it might be that you can also open some of that out and supply it to your client in different ways as well, depending what you want your client to do with it. So that's about it. We've already overrun our 5 minutes, I'm afraid, but if you need to source, manage, map or analyse any spatial data, then get in touch with Jogger and myself, and I'm sure we can find a way to help you with the problem you have. Thanks very much for listening.